Hey guys, it's Kriss from Movie Trailer Reviews with an interview from New York Comic Con 2014. I sat down with author Matt Kadish to discuss his book, Earthman Jack vs. the Ghost Planet. If you grew up loving sci-fi adventure movies and TV shows, I think you'll enjoy this book and the interview. So check it out, leave a comment, share it on YouTube. Hope you guys enjoy. That's the thing that gets me with this book is there's so many pulp culture references like comic books and video games and movies in this. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, basically the book's always been my idea of a love letter to all the stuff that I grew up like loving: video games, hot chicks, wrestling, science fiction. I basically took all the stuff I loved growing up in the 80s and early 90s and mushed it up into a ball and said, what would this story be like if Steven Spielberg directed it? Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like the inspiration for it. And I layer in a bunch of Easter eggs for, little references to the stuff I love. And it's funny because, it's a young adult novel, so young kids read it. They don't get all the references or hardly any. They still enjoy it. But their parents or, people our age who read the book, they start seeing these little things. They're like, oh, wow. And then they reread it. It's like, oh, I never saw this before. So it adds a little fun rereadability to the book.
So that's one of the fun things about this book. So I started reading. I couldn't finish it, but I got the first episode in, which, yeah. By the way, I got to ask, the font on the episode, did you kind of take that from Star Wars? Because it looks kind of Star Wars-y to me.
The whole, everyone loves Star Wars. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I knew that I was going to be drawing inspiration from Star Wars, so I wanted to kind of that was another little wink and nod, is using that type of font for the episode breaks in the book.
So I didn't notice it with episode 1, but I got all the way to episode 2, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm looking at it, I'm looking at it, I'm like, that looks like very tricky. So
yeah.
That's the thing. So I started reading the book, and you read the title, and you kind of see the little cartoon characters. I'm like, man, it's probably for young adults. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it. But then I start reading it, and you're right. I get so many of these references to my childhood. Like, one of the things I immediately thought of was, I think it's the Last Starfighter in there. But what I like about it is that it's those movies from our 80s are so, they're all unrealistic, but they kind of just don't make sense in the way that would never work this way.
Yeah.
And what I like about your book in some of these cases, our hero Jack, he's getting these situations where things don't work out the way he thinks they're going to work. He's playing a video game, and it's, hey, I played Call of Duty, I know how to do this.
Yeah.
And he goes to pick up a gun, and it's like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I always kind of dislike it when I'm reading books and the main character's too perfect. After 2 seconds of training, he becomes like a master swordsman or something like that. So I wanted to keep Jack kind of realistic. One of the things I love about Indiana Jones is that he's not a very good hero. He fails a lot, but he tries really hard to succeed. And that's kind of the thing I want to do with Jack is this is a guy who's going to fall on his face a lot, but he's going to try really hard.
Right.
And the scene you were referencing where he's he gets his first gun. He's in his first fight, and the bad guys are over there, and he's prepare to get owned, jerkwad, and he fires and misses the guy by a mile, and then all the bad guys turn to him, he's like, oh crap,
right?
So that's one of the fun things. In fact, I get a lot of readers who tell me that's the point in the book where they're like, okay, I'm on board with this.
Yeah.
This is something different that I'm not used to seeing, and I'm enjoying it.
Because we're not used to that. You're used to them being perfect right away, it working, it always works out, and things go that way, and then with this, it just doesn't. I don't want to spoil anything. That's why I'm glad I actually didn't finish the book. I don't want to talk about spoilers, but there's something very dramatic that happens to him, in that first episode. And I'm reading, and I'm like, wow, this is just not going the way you would expect. Because when you read these kind of things, sometimes it like you said, it goes perfectly, and it's not nice and neat here, and it is very, It's a more personal story because of that. I really like that.
Yeah, this is the first of a 7-book series, and the idea behind the space opera nature of the series is that we see Jack from his humble beginnings as a underachieving high schooler from a small town in Ohio, and we see his journey to become the greatest hero the universe has ever seen by the end of book 7. And so that's part of the fun, is showing oh, he's not perfect at the end, and then you see all the kind of situations that mold him into what eventually becomes the guy who basically saves all of creation. So it's a fun little romp. But he definitely, it's funny because when you're writing a book, unless you're George R.R. Martin, you don't kill off your main characters. So the reader's always like, well, I know nothing, bad's going to happen to the main character, so I don't feel any tension or anything like that. So my kind of philosophy is well, okay, maybe I can't kill Jack off, but I can certainly make things really bad for him,
Right.
you know, and that's where kind of the tension will come from.
Yeah, I knew this book was going to be a little bit different. It was way before the part that you talked about in the book. It's actually the introduction when you're introducing us to like the Earth has his champion, and he's a military leader who's great, and he dies. You know, it's just one of them. I'm like, oh,
it's a shame he perished, and
with everybody
his
else,
story would have been really interesting.
right. You know, it's that kind of stuff that's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I wanted kind of like a Hitchhiker's Guide type feel to the opening of the book, where one of the things I loved about Hitchhiker's Guide is like, it just had this sense of humor that, you know, was kind of whimsical and like set the stage for you to be like, okay, there's some funny stuff in this book. And so like I kind of wanted to do that and lead the reader in who might not be familiar with my work and get the idea like, okay, this is something different, this is something cool. But then like once you get to like the realistic kind of emotional parts of the book, then you're like, wow, this is deeper than I thought it would be. So people seem to respond really well with that.
One of the things I like about the way you wrote this book, because like you said, you know, it's for young adults, but adults can like reading because of the pop culture references. But I also like the way you've written Jack. When you read, I've read a lot of these books. I grew up reading some of these sci-fi books. When you're reading these young sci-fi books, you know, you're like, oh, I would never say that as a kid. He's like, I would never do that. He says a lot of things. He's a smart ass, you know, and he says a lot of the things you would think of to say or you wish you could say, but you know better than to say them. And it's like, I get a lot of that from there. So I have to ask, is that kind of modeled off of your childhood? Did you kind of like the way you reacted to these kind of situations growing up, or just something that you
a lot of it was pulled from like experiences I had in high school. I mean, like, I think everyone who watches, you know, Comic-Con related stuff can relate to the fact, like, you know, we were geeks growing up, we were nerds, got picked on a little bit. You know, we had the crush on the girl who didn't know we existed, and like, you know,
she
all
knows
that
my
stuff.
name.
Yeah, exactly. So like, there's all these kind of universal truths to high school that people can relate to, and I just kind of pulled from my experience on that, and added maybe like a few quippy lines in there, here and there. But I wanted to keep Jack real, so like anyone reading that can be like, that's kind of the experience I had in high school. I like this guy, you know?
Yeah, it happens a lot, and it's very refreshing to read, actually, because like you said, most times you have adult readers who don't write these younger characters like that. You're like, that's not really how it goes. It doesn't go this way. He's not, you know, bad things happen to him, but he's also not depressing at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, you usually get these characters who are not in the best situation. You know, his father has left. He's living in a trailer park. He's not rich. Normally when these characters are written, they're written so they're very depressing, but he's not a depressing guy. He's actually very almost cheerful in a way.
Yeah,
And it's,
you know, when I set out to write the book, like my goal was I wanted kind of like a Spielbergian adventure. And one of the things I loved about those movies growing up, like, you know, Never-Ending Story, Last Starfighter, like stuff like that, is there was like this sense of hope and wonder and stuff like that, where it wasn't so cynical. There was the idea that, okay, life is good, life is worth fighting for, life is worth living, and look at all the wonders the universe has to offer, even though there are some dangers involved and adventures we go on. Overall, everything's good and hopeful. And I feel like a lot of science fiction nowadays has kind of moved towards like the darker, grittier stuff, and I wanted to capture that that initial feeling of wonder and awe for a new generation, you know, and maybe bring back some of the people who got all cynical to be like, oh, this is fun, you know? I remember when sci-fi was fun.
Right. So, it brings me to my next topic. So, we're here at New York Comic-Con, and we were just talking about how, you know, growing up, this stuff was not cool. Now, we were talking before we got on camera about how this New York Comic-Con has grown to such a big length. What is your thoughts on just pop culture in general becoming, well, nerd culture and sci-fi culture now becoming pop culture and becoming, you know, more known, and everybody wants to be a part of it now?
I blame the girls. You know, when I was a kid and my dad used to take me to Comic-Cons, we were lucky if we found an overweight woman behind a table selling comic books. Nowadays you get like supermodels walking around here, and you know, just the way it is, when girls accept something, it becomes cool, you know, because they drive commerce, and like they're like on the edge of pop culture and stuff like that.
Us guys are stupid and we follow.
Exactly.
We will follow anywhere with women.
Girls,
we'll
where are you
follow.
going?
Yeah.
So that's, I think that's the big indicator, is the fact that, you know, once Hollywood kind of accepted comic books and started taking them seriously, and girls were like, oh, okay, Iron Man's cool, Batman's cool, like whatever. Once they kind of moved in that direction, that's mainstream just followed, you know. So I blame the girls. Yeah.
Blame the women, yes. So again, we talked about in your book, you have all these references, past and present. Give me an example. What are some of your favorite past sci-fi movies and things, and what are some of your current ones?
Well, Star Wars, obviously. You know, when I was a kid, my dad was in the Air Force. He was stationed in Germany. And the only American movie that we had when we were out there was a beat-to-crap VHS bootleg of Star Wars. And so I must have watched that thing like 1,000 times. I didn't even know there were 2 other movies.
That was just the first one.
Until we got back to the States.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, there are 2 more? And like I watched the crap out of those things. So Star Wars, Star Trek, Stargate, Last Starfighter, pretty much anything with star in the title. But then you get stuff like, you know, Goonies, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, you know, all those great adventures that you grew up like, you know, just loving and wanting to get more of. And nowadays I'm really into the, you know, the comic book movies. You know, like I really enjoy seeing like the stuff Marvel is coming out with. DC, I'm still on the fence about, but I like the fact that they're trying, you know. So
well, I got to ask you, because it came out. Did you get to see this week's premiere of The Flash?
I did, yes.
What do you think of that?
I loved it.
Yes.
You know, DC does TV shows really well, and I kind of wish that DC would give their movie verse to the guys who do the TV stuff, because they really, you can tell they love comics, and they're really respectful with the material. I think that's the key to success with comic book stuff.
Thank you. So to wrap this up, when are the current book's out now?
Yes.
You have 7 more coming out, I believe?
Yeah, so it's a planned series of 7, so there are 6 more scheduled to be released. We've got the sequel coming out in September of 2015. Okay. That's called Earthman Jack versus the Secret Army. And basically I have all 7 episodes planned. You know, I really hate it when you get into a book series and the first couple of books are amazing, and then they kind of taper off and they get boring or like not as good or whatever. So I'm really careful to kind of plan out each book and try to make sure that they all fit together and make sense, but also stand on their own and are like really fun adventures, kind of like individually.
Awesome. It's like I said, it was a surprising read to me.
I got it to the end.
That's why I can't wait for it. Like I said, I got to the end of the first episode and was like, holy shit, you know. So I really can't wait to finish reading, which is weird because I got the book last week. I'm like, I'm gonna try to read as much as I can for the interview, but I don't know. You know, sometimes I'm weird about these books, but I started reading it, and I'm like 2 o'clock in the morning after being here all day, trying to rush through and read as much as I can. So it's a really great read, and I've been enjoying it. And I can tell that you really enjoy writing about this stuff.
I do.
It feels good to have somebody who enjoys the sci-fi and remembers where we came from,
exactly,
if you will,
and makes it fun. You know,
yeah.
I think it's too much. You know, you have the hard science fiction, which is all about the science. Then you have kind of like the weird science fiction, which is all about, you know, military and battles and stuff. And I'm like, where's the fun? You know? So I think reading should be fun, and everything that I think stands the test of time is stuff that you can revisit time and time again and be like, yeah, I enjoy this. So that's what I wanted to try and accomplish.
Well, there you guys have it. Earthman Jack versus the Ghost Planet, not Protocol, Ghost Planet. And you said the chapter, you can get the book now. Where can they get the book?
We're on Amazon, iTunes, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold. And next year, knock on wood, we're going to be in bookstores across the country. So hopefully that'll happen.
And also next year, it will be the
September 2015, book 2.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a fun interview.
Get your act together. My life's a movie. I leave you in that act forever.
My life's like a movie. My life's like a movie. My life's like a movie.